The Boogeyman is directed by Rob Savage, written by Scott Beck and Brian Woods from a short story from Stephen King. A lot of big names there. And this film follows a traumatized family grieving from a recent loss that slowly begins to realize that there just might be a monster lurking in their closet. Rob Savage directed Host, which was one of the most talked about horror films during the pandemic. It came out on Shudder. It was under an hour long and it was very effective. He next directed Dashcam, and this is his first film that isn't in the found footage style. He really gets to play a lot here as a filmmaker. In this film, he proves that he's very strong behind the camera. There's an opening shot that impressively pans around a child's room, eventually ending on a photograph, giving us information in very unique ways. Watching the film, it felt like he had been let off a leash that found footage was holding him and restraining him to this whole time. He really got to do a lot with the camera here because found footage, as effective as it can be, and as much as I like it when it's good, you really do have to find a way to make your story work within the confines of what could conceivably be filmed at any given moment, whether it's on a phone or a camera or a security device or something along those lines. And you have to change the way your brain works when you're writing a film like that or directing a film like that. But here, you can have a fictional camera that doesn't exist within the narrative world that your characters do, and you can do whatever you want. And I can tell that he really had a good time with that, because this is a very well-directed horror film. It's also very well acted. Chris Messina and Sophie Thatcher especially. Everyone in the film gives very good performances, and the creature design itself is also really good. And I think it's very wise that he chose to keep this thing in the darkness most of the time. I mean, if you watch any horror movie that's ever been made, that is the standard. Usually when you see something very bright and in clear view, it's not as interesting. The darkness allows your imagination to fill in all those gaps. As far as Boogeyman movies go, this is easily the best we've ever had. There was one from when I was younger called Boogeyman. Are you wondering why I have the 2005 Boogeyman film starring Barry Watson? It's because I wanted to watch it, and I'm pretty sure this was like $1. And yeah, that's why I have it. Hope that answers your question. As I said, it's written by Beck and Woods, who are pals of mine. I think they did a fantastic job with the dialogue. The characters are very well fleshed out for a film like this, and you could easily kind of step back from that and just rely on the fact that you've got this very marketable movie about a monster that everybody knows with the Stephen King name. But they did a really good job of making sure that, especially Sophie Thatcher's character, Sadie, has a lot going on in her life. There's a backstory with her mother and a very effective scare. It's a scare that strikes this really unique balance between being frightening but also emotionally potent, which is very difficult to do. Films like The Sixth Sense or Hereditary are pretty good with that. But just like with any horror film that involves some kind of entity or creature that everybody knows about, whether it's Tooth Fairy in Darkness Falls or it's that Gretel and Hansel movie or whatever it is, it's always very difficult to find the perfect amount of mythology and backstory to build for your creature or your ghost or your demon. Films have a very difficult time with this historically. Some of the best horror movies ever made have a hard time communicating that information to the audience in a way that doesn't feel like what's called hand-holding. It's kind of like the filmmaker is reaching out of the screen, grasping your hand as an audience member, and leading you along so that you understand the points of the backstory. And it's something that has to happen if you want your characters to be involved in some kind of a mystery. You don't want them to know everything about this entity or being that they're up against, because then it would be kind of boring, right? So you have to hide things from them and the audience, and at some point that information has got to come out. And you have to decide how much of that you let the audience in on and how much of it you're keeping back from them. When it comes to the mythology of the Boogeyman, I think the Boogeyman is so well known and everybody just kind of understands that it's this thing in the closet that might eat you or your kids or something, or take your kids away or whatever. It's part of the story that most people are aware of. The only thing for me that really clashed with the mythology presented of the Boogeyman and the way the film plays is that it's a very emotional film. It's a very dark film. And it's not quite as fun as a movie about the Boogeyman might have been. And I'm not saying that as a fault. I'm just saying that's the choice that was made. And so sometimes I was looking for a little more information. Because the film itself is very serious, I was looking for a little more backstory, some explanation for how the Boogeyman is going from place to place. We recognize that he might be jumping from closet to closet, essentially, but it's not entirely explained. Where this movie really shines is in its direction, is in its dialogue and its characters. When it gets into the mythology of its closet-dwelling monster, it can get a little murky, but I think if you want to see a horror film this weekend that is very well directed, that does a lot with its premise and has good characters, The Boogeyman is not going to do you wrong. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more videos very soon, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.